Let's go. And I have Charles with me. Charles Brunsworth. Got that right?
No.
It's not.
What state am I from?
I think Kansas. Nah, fuck.
You got that wrong. You got that wrong too.
Kentucky.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got you. So
I don't think you're. My last name is Burwell.
oh, it's not Brunsworth?
No, Burwell.
I totally butchered your last name.
That's all right, man.
I apologize
I
for
say
that.
as much as we talk, I don't know if I've ever told him my last name except maybe the first time we met. Because it doesn't come up in conversation. We just holler at Dread, like Charles, but Burwell.
Charles Burwell. So you coming from Kentucky, Louisville, what was that like listening to all of these different artists coming up? You have Bill Withers, you got George Benson, Al Jarreau, all of these different people from the 70s and 80s coming up. What was that like listening to them?
I think like most people, you
Want to just push it in a little more? I'm sorry.
You want to. Okay. Like most people, you always think the music of your era when you're a young person is probably the best music. So, but I think it was a special time, like in the 70s.
I mean, the way it makes you feel, though, the way
Yeah.
we was just vibing right now
Yeah.
and having a good time.
I know. I was always, I'm 68 now, but I was proud to be a child of the 70s because I grew up in a time where things were changing all over the world, whole music and culture and people who'd never been together were getting together. And it's just like, man, I'm thankful for the experience,
Definitely, it's a wonderful experience around that era, being able to see all of those different types of music coming out, not only with the blues, but you got blues, you got pop, then you have later on you have hip hop and all of that stuff. It's just I don't know. I feel like I kind of missed out not being born in that era. It's like because right now a lot of stuff is just crazy. So for me, it's just I'm not. I don't think. I feel like the music was definitely better back in the days.
Well, I'm partial, but I have to agree. Because now, I don't listen to the music too much now. Rap, I like some of it.
I rarely.
But I love my jazz, man. It's like jazz, like I said, it how you makes you feel in those songs that say something to you, man. It's like when I listen to music, I want to listen to music. I don't want to listen to music and do other things. It's like some people, music to them is just in the background. I can do it when I'm reading and stuff. But
does the music
a lot of
help
times
you?
I'll sit in my car and just early in the morning listen to music, just sit out there, have my eyes closed, man. All I hear is the trees blowing, and I gotta have my music.
That's kind of how I feel. To be honest, I don't think I could really study without music or without something playing to kind of like chill me.
Yeah.
Like there's just in the background, even if it's something I could not even pay attention to, it's like I could really just soak it all in and just enjoy it.
Yeah. I mean, book reading and music are some things I have to do every day. There's a couple other things I like to do.
I didn't
that
think
you know
about that.
But those things are just so much part of me. It's like, man, if I'd had those, I don't know.
Listening to music every day. I didn't think about how much times we listen to music or how we never really get a chance to. Mm-hmm. I don't think nobody really takes a break off music. Do you think so? Like, I think I'm not gonna say everybody, but a lot of people listen to music almost all the time. Mm-hmm. Whether they're going to work, whether you're fun to work out, whether you're about to make something to eat, or it just passes on time.
Yeah. I see this lady walking outside here. Sometimes I hear she listens to her country or Western music, but she's walking to her music. So, I think music's one of those things. Everybody has some music, You have your favorite. Everybody has their favorite music, and it's like to each his own is what I always say. You live and let live. So,
but music, I don't know. Music also connects a lot of different people too. When you go to the concerts and you see people performing, not nowadays because of obviously coronavirus, but when like before those times where the crowds in the stadiums was able to fill up, it was just thousands and thousands of people just shouting the same lyrics and just singing along, and it's just I don't know. I haven't been to a concert in a minute.
Well, we listened to Sly and the Family, so I think I saw them in concert years ago. Because people, concerts were. They used to come to colleges all the time. They had groups that come to college or in the town where the college. So I guess they still do that, but man, we saw some. I saw the Isley Brothers. You say Isley. The Isley Brothers.
How was that like seeing the Isley Brothers, seeing them perform all of those
that stuff like that? Like
Between the Sheets, Choose Your Lover.
Yeah, you said
Footsteps in the Dark.
Yeah, people use that term electric, but man, And that's how it is when things make it. So everybody, like you said, a whole group of people.
Just
It's kind of like,
transcend the same.
man, when it's thing like, I think the feeling people get at church when they're
Yeah,
together.
it's like a big choir.
Everybody
It's
gets
like
that.
that. It's like
everybody
the
gets that same
energy.
feeling, yeah. And in a band when they're playing something, I have this song by the Neville Brothers. Everybody plays a fool. And it's the end of this song. I got to play for it next when we're in the car. And these guys, I can see them playing, and they so together that it's just the way they doing it. Man, I know them brothers are sitting there like.
I don't know. You always put me onto some old music. You gotta. Yeah, I don't. It's like I don't know. Like I wouldn't say it's like you're musically inclined with everything because it's like all of the songs you done put me onto with the blues, with George Benson, Al Jarreau, and all. Like to be honest, I would have never knew about the Isley Brothers if it wasn't for you.
Hey man, but I'm
Like,
glad I could
I knew some of the
speak about
songs,
those
the
guys,
beats
really.
they made, but
Oh,
I
yeah.
didn't know that like
Where
it
they
was a
come
whole.
from.
And they made Contagious. I don't know if you know Contagious, but they made Contagious with R. Kelly, and that's another hit they made. That's like I don't know. They just got so much hits on top of hits.
Oh,
The
yeah, yeah.
Isley Brothers is bringing
That
back
was,
the back,
man.
the back
Yeah.
to
Oh,
back
yeah.
to back.
That was the day. That was the
What
day.
was it like being raised in Louisville, Kentucky?
Well, I grew up in an interesting time there because I was one of the first classes to go to integrated school because of Brown versus Board of Education that integrated all schools in the United States.
And what year was that?
I started school 1958. Okay, I think Brown versus Board of Education started in was passed in 1954. But prior to that, man, most people went to segregated schools. So that allowed me to go to better schools. And
Did you get a chance to go to a segregated school, or when you went to school was
No,
it always?
it was always integrated from the very first day I went. I always went black and white.
But your parents went to segregated schools.
Oh yeah.
How was that like for them when they told you? Like, did they tell you that the education was going to be better because the schools was going to be together, or?
Oh yeah, because that's something that everybody knows. It was always separate but equal. But that minority schools were never at the par with white schools. It was just everybody knew that.
Well,
black
why do you
school-
think they did that though? Like, why do you think there was?
Racism, brother, that's all it is, man. It's like you can read these, the books I read, and one thing a person want to keep away from you to keep you down is education.
So-
It's against the law to teach a slave how to read, or a slave or anybody to teach a slave how to read, for a slave to own paper, books, ink, anything. That was against the law in the South. You understand? You could get killed for it because, man, it's just like today. If somebody don't want you to know anything, they keep important information from you. How are you going to prosper? How are you going to do what other people do? How are you going to do what he does? Because he knows something you don't know. We were talking about that stock that day. You seem to have that flair for the stocks.
Yeah.
But there's still inside things you need to know.
There's a lot of things.
Yeah,
There's a
but
lot
see,
of different measurements
But
and.
what I always tell you, brother, read, because people, people going to hold things back. But like I said, that was just a fact. They held back education every chance they got from black people. That everybody knew.
So, what was it like with you? I wouldn't say knowing that they held back education, but coming to the school where there's whites and there's blacks together, and your parents not being able to experience something like that. Did they prepare you to go to school for like dealing with certain situations, or
Yes.
what was that like?
It was we had a sense of pride because when you my family we're from a family of educators anyway, and I always had a sense of pride that when you're representing your people, you do a little better. And I never was the kind of person that always looked at somebody else and said they're so much smarter than me, they can do something I can't do. I mean, I knew how to read before I went to school because my older sister, she knew how to read, so she taught me, and my mother read, my sister read.
So you learned how to read before you were in school?
Went to school, yeah. And I always loved to read, and when you see me, brother.
Yeah,
I'm
every
reading
time
day.
you
I
always
got
reading a
books.
book. And you gave me a couple of books.
Yeah, I mean,
all the time. A
that's
book
what
of
I tell
poems,
everybody.
the book of assassinations, all of
Man,
those different books you gave me.
Read.
And I appreciate it.
I'll
'cause
tell anybody, if I tell anybody anything, you ask me to give somebody one word of advice, read.
Do you feel like reading kind of changed, like I would say change your life? Like do you feel like you weren't, do you feel like that you would be able to do certain things if you didn't know how to read? Like
I couldn't imagine my life without reading, brother. I couldn't, man. I still bump into people who can't read, and it's a scary thing, but that's what it is in this day and age. So, I tell my students about guy I met in the store that couldn't use the scale to weigh vegetables. And then once I showed him how to use it, he couldn't figure out how much it cost for a head of cabbage, you know. And then when I got up in the front, just so happened when he was paying with pennies. Now, he asked me
And
for
when
help.
was this?
Oh, that had to be about 5 years ago. And I was in the supermarket, right? And the brother, my contemporary, he's a black man about my size, you know, and he saw me, so he felt more comfortable asking me for help. But it was just a simple scale for vegetables. You know, you put it in there, and the dial tells you how much it weighs, 1 pound, 2 pounds, and then you look 49 cents a pound.
And he wasn't able to. How did that make you feel seeing somebody?
Oh, man, like I said, life's all a learning experience. It makes me thankful, you know what I'm saying? Because you always think that could have been me, you know, without my family, without the choices I made, you know. Any one of us could be that, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, it's common. You know, we all know people like that.
But coming up from
Struggle.
that, it's just, I don't know, like, because I guess public education and a lot of people, you know, in school and elementary school.
Expectations.
Like, I guess a lot of people, I guess they learn how to read, but they still, I guess, even when we finish school and stuff, you don't really find too much people reading books or still learning. And, like, what are some of the books you have now with you today? Because I see you brought some books with you.
Yeah, you know, it's always our topic of conversation. Most of the, you know, I got Worse Than Slavery, the book that we were talking about, the chain gangs in the South, that they use that as a way of...
You said Worse Than Slavery?
Yeah.
And who made this book?
This was printed by David M. Oshinsky. You can hold it up. You know, and like I said, it just talks about the chain gang system.
The Parchment Farm and the Ordeal of Jim Crow Justice. So does this have to do with stuff relating to, like, some of the laws they passed with Jim Crow and, like...
Oh, yeah. Because after slavery, you know, they had the people who were slaves, you had to have a way to control all these now free people, right? They didn't want them all to leave to go other places. They still needed the labor, you know. And so they used to lock black people up for years for, like, stealing a few cents change.
And that's
You know what
one
I mean?
thing I find
So they would have
fascinating,
all-
too. I always catch you reading a book about slavery, just about history.
Yeah, well, I love history. 'Cause
What
it's
is
real
it?
people.
What is it about history that gets you
It's just real people, man. Real people doing. How did they live? How did they do this,
real
man?
life
It's like,
experiences?
This man? This book today is like putting on old massa. This is slave narratives. And this guy Henry Bibb, who was born in Kentucky, like I was, right? And I just started reading this. But no matter what the time is, how a person feels about, you know, like this is like a young man falling in love, and he's describing it. This guy's a slave, and he's been beaten and sold to several families.
Oh, that book is about a slave?
Well, there's several slave narratives, about
okay.
3 different people.
Okay.
But the guy talks about but when I arrived at the age of 18, which was in the year of 1833, it was my lot to be introduced to the favor of a mulatto slave girl named Melinda, who lived in Oldham County, Kentucky, about 4 miles from the residence of my owner. Melinda was a medium-sized girl, graceful in her walk, of an extraordinary make, and active in business. Her skin was of a smooth texture, red cheeks and dark and penetrating eyes. She moved in the highest circles.
And this is him describing a woman he obviously probably likes, that he
Loved
sees.
her. He fell in love. He was 18 years old. He'd been a slave all his life, and all he could think about was being free. He'd ran away several times. I want to be free. I want to be free. Because once he knew he was a slave, he knew there was freedom. But once he met this girl, he admits that from then on, you know, slavery took a back seat to her. Because even the horrors of slavery meant nothing to the feelings in the heart.
That's
So,
deep.
Yeah.
That's some deep stuff.
And, you know, she was in high circles of slaves, of free people of color. You know, so she was thought of highly by everybody. The picture, she's a beautiful woman.
And that's crazy, too, because sometimes with these beautiful women and these beautiful slaves, sometimes the slave masters wouldn't they probably rape these women or have kids with them?
Later on in the story, it goes into that. And think of you as a man, or somebody could just walk in your house and take your wife in front of you, and if you do, all you do is get killed. because that's the reality of it. You couldn't protest.
All of that stuff is
How
terrifying.
emasculating is that, man? There's somebody, I mean, you now today, a guy look at your woman wrong, you ready to fight. But yeah, just take a dude, just come in your house. You don't have to knock.
And you can't even do anything about it.
That's the reality. That's why I read history, man, because it seems hard to believe that people live like that. But you got to admire slaves, and people had went out of their way and to go and read, learn how to read, and have to suffer what they would suffer if somebody caught them. But they knew, like, man, I have to be able to read, and I have to teach somebody else how to read. And that's what they know that we don't know.
Were you did you have any family members or grandparents or ancestors that were slaves?
Oh yeah,
that came.
Oh yeah, I mean they were all passed away by the time I knew them, but I had.
But was it grandparents, great grandparents?
Yes. Because all my family, as far as I know, was from Kentucky. And Kentucky during the Civil War they were neutral. I mean, they weren't on the North or the South. They were neutral. But it was still a slave-holding state, so there were slaves in Kentucky. Okay. But of course, none of I never knew anyone. And my relatives, like I said, most of them were educated.
So, do you think they probably got a chance to free themselves, or they weren't probably enslaved at all? Or
that's one of the things I always regret that I didn't get a chance to talk to my great grandfather. He was a teacher.
But your parents didn't tell you stories or anything?
They didn't.
That wasn't really
It was one of those things we talked about. You know what I mean? And,
something really hard to deal with.
But it's like, even then I was younger. I didn't know the importance of knowing stuff like that. I think about that. My Uncle John, who you and me have a lot in common with him because he loved cornbread. my Uncle John, man, he ate cornbread. The pancake cornbread like I showed you make.
Oh,
my Uncle
God.
Minnie. Now Uncle John was as dark as his table. You hear me? And his wife, Aunt Ninny, could pass as white. Mm-hmm. We talk about around 1900, right? Mm-hmm. Imagine the couple in the South going down the street like that, and the taunts and the people probably mess with.
That was probably intimidating for other people to see.
Course. But Uncle John, he was a big bear of a guy. Man, when he was an older guy, he walked with a cane. He was an older guy, but 3 times a day, Uncle John they had the same thing: black coffee, bacon and eggs, and pancake cornbread. He's the first person I ever remember having cornbread when I was a little kid, because he was around us, my grandmother's house, and that's where we lived. And I think that's where I got my love of it, because I eat it, and I can eat it every day, 3 times a day, too.
Cornbread is definitely not recent.
No, that was slave food. It was. Most of those things, that's true. Man,
it's funny that you say it's slave food, but it's the way we describe it. We don't really mean no harm when we say slave food, but it's like, that's where most of the stuff came from.
Yeah, if you're hungry, you got to eat, man. You're going to eat what you make do what you have, right? Yeah. So, like I said, we talked about, I've never had pig's feet. My father would eat all that stuff.
I'm not gonna lie.
Country boy from
Being Haitians low key be making pig dance. Not all the time, but there's sometimes they be making pig feet. I'm not a big.
But
they make it. They stew it with what? They stew it with okra, but we call it kalalu. But they make it with okra and pig feet. It's
that's what I mean.
I'm not a big fan of pig feet.
I can't imagine. I've never tasted.
But you had family members who was killing pig feet.
Oh yeah. My father, man, he'd eat everything. He was a country boy. He'd go hunting and fishing, and if he could catch it or fish it out, he'd eat it. And he'd make us. We'd have to try it though. We couldn't say, "Oh, Daddy, I don't want that." He'd say, "No."
So he would have you try everything.
You taste it.
What was one of the weirdest things he probably had you try?
Groundhog, I guess.
Groundhog, yeah, groundhog.
Yeah, it's strange enough. It's one of the things I used to like. It was
did you eat it on Groundhog's Day or?
No, I don't know. Whenever he brought it home. I don't think there was any relevance to that, but I think it was,
he
go out
came home.
Whatever season it was, he got hunting and bring it back.
He came home with a hog and cooked it.
Groundhog, yeah. And, that's one of the things. There's not many of those things. I didn't like turtle or rabbit or squirrel.
And you ate turtle, rabbit, and squirrel? I
had to taste it. My father, he asked you to do something. He did it. Like I said.
So, what would that be like? So you never told him no?
I mean, I can say no to my father in a reasonable thing. He wasn't no ogre, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but
he says, look, you're not going to tell me you don't like it. You haven't tasted it. And he'd be forceful, but he'd be joking too, because he's going to see your action like here. And he'd get a kick, because he had 5 kids he loved. He could do that to everybody. And, it's like, Okay, so you can't say you didn't like it because haven't tried it. Just like I can't say I don't like him. I don't know him. You know what I mean? So it's a life lesson there. Don't say you don't like anything, man. You haven't tried it yet.
Very
Sometimes
true.
we did, sometimes we didn't. Most of us didn't like the rabbit and squirrels. My sister likes rabbit, but I don't think nobody else does. I used to like groundhog because it tastes like roast beef. I couldn't eat one now, okay? But it's like life lessons. You try something. And my mother, she was just like hey, life of the party, sweet person, man. My father brought it home. She'd cook it, and cook it well, man. Because
So your dad was one that was bringing in the stuff and also cooking it.
no, my mother cooked.
Oh, your mother. So your dad just brought in what he like whatever he found.
Whatever. My mother would figure out how to cook it, man. My mother could cook, man. I'm gonna tell you, I've never eaten so well in my life, man. My Patty feeds me well, but my mother.
That's one thing. When your mom cooks for you, it's a different feeling because it's like
man.
you could feel the soul in it.
There's some things now I crave so many times, man. It's like, man, just a mouthful of it.
What are some of the probably old school recipes that you haven't had in a while that your mom made?
Hot water cornbread.
Hot water cornbread. What is it?
Man, I don't know.
What's the difference?
I'm gonna make some and I'm gonna show you, okay? Because that's why I said that. So hot water cornbread and man, she used to make this pound cake. I don't know how she made it. It was so light, man.
Pound cake.
Yeah, what? My mother made a chicken salad, man. I can go on and on. Stewed tomatoes, man.
Stewed tomatoes.
I didn't like tomatoes, man. My mother made stewed tomatoes. I eat a big bowl of it. Mom.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one thing. I was watching a Mike Tyson podcast, and he was saying how one of the reasons why the love of a black man and a black woman and a black child or her son is very special because the way our mothers feed in that energy and that love and just making sure I don't know. I don't know. It's just like my mother never wanted to see me hurt or never wanted to see me hungry. I always wanted to overfill me.
Right.
And it's hard because a lot of times we try to look for these women, but really we don't realize we're looking for our mom, the person that loved us like our mom, that cooked for us, cleaned for us, won't complain, nag us on about little things, but just providing that love and just security. You don't really find that nowhere else.
Yeah, well, I think it's a father-mother relationship is a different thing. I think that's like I always knew I was loved. I had my brothers, my father, my grandparents, my mother, my brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
But
Well, you had
my
both
mother,
parents.
Yeah, but my mother, it's like I don't know. She made it all go, not just for my father. He'd get up and go to work, and doing all the things, man, to make the family go. And we were happy. We were like. I've never been hungry in my life. I've never felt neglected or lonely because I had a family that loved me. And, man, we sit at the table and have a great meal and talk and laugh. And, it's like, man, I tell people, I can't remember. I have two sisters. I don't remember since we've been teenagers. Since that, we've never had a cross word. We just don't. And when we were younger, we didn't fight. We didn't do that. We loved each other. We were close. And I have an amazing family. I tell you all the time how much I miss them. It's like, man, we get along so well.
Growing up with my sister, I'm not gonna lie. I used to fight with her a lot.
Yeah.
She used to try to force me to eat a lot of food too. She would try to overfill me.
Oh yeah, we'll see.
And you never
That's
really had
the thing to
arguments
fight
or
for,
anything with your sisters?
No, man, no. It wasn't like that. My mother and father, I was the oldest son, so I had to protect everybody anyway, but it was just like,
Was that
they
something?
sweet people, man. I got
Was
no
that
problem
something
with it.
they instilled in you? Just loving everybody. There's
Oh,
no
yeah.
need to really
Oh, yeah.
bicker with your cousin or your immediate family.
No, we was not like that. We always close knit, man. Everybody loved my mother, and I don't know. Everybody in my family, we were close. It's just, man. I tell you, I'm blessed like that, man. That's why I miss them so much.
Yeah, it's amazing. And
My brother, like I said, I have a brother. I had two brothers. One passed away. He was a year younger than me, and my best friend, Jerome. And I think about him every day. And my younger brother, who's 3 years younger than me, Roy. I mean, if I walked out of here now and he walked right back in wearing the same thing, you weren't looking at him, and sat back down, you'd have to look up and say, "Oh, wait a minute, you're not Charles." I could walk past him now because he just met me. If I went out and my brother walked in wearing the same thing, and you weren't paying much attention.
Would he even really
We
would
looked at
saw
so
the
much alike
difference?
because I walk down the street, people say, "Hey, Roy," and I'll be like, "Hey." And I guess people mistake him for me too, because the kids probably call him Mr. C sometimes, because that's what I am.
Yeah. I don't know. Just life in general, just having a family, having that support system, it just gets you by. Because a lot of times you think you don't need it till just things get rough.
Yeah, I give my credit, all the credit to my family, man, because I know people that I grew up with, man. You know, people are killed and did time in prison for stupid stuff, and it's like, I don't know, my family, man, they just kept me
Was there
straight on the right
lynchings?
things, man.
Was there like any lynchings around then? Like being
Well, you know, just like the lynchings of they having today, like George Floyd, you know, not with the ropes like they used to, but you know, brothers still getting killed on the street by police, and you know, I give you books about it, brother. You do your podcast on some stories. I give you read because you know we know it's still happening.
I don't know, and that's one of the things that that hurts is when we see homeless people, and that's one of the things I question is like, how could there be homeless people in this society? Because for me, when I just look at humans and I just think about humans just in general, like just human nature and why we were here and all this land given to us, and the skills that we used to have as being farmers, hunters, and gatherers, and building societies and stuff. It's like, how could we just leave people on the side and just have homeless people? Like, when did that stuff come? Like,
Well, we've been homeless, man. I guess as long as it's been people with things and people without. Remember I told you about the brother I saw with the tattered pants and his
yeah, but
butt
and that's the
hanging
thing.
out?
When he told me that story, it's just like, why? Like, how could that be? I don't know. Like, just think about it. Like, I'm talking about like way in the past, like in the probably 1400s, if me and you were just in a different area, let's just say probably on an island, and damn, I forgot where the hell I was going with this. I forgot where the hell I was going. What was I
That's like
talking
we was
about?
talking about the homeless people.
Yeah, the homeless people.
Why
Yeah,
are they
yeah.
here? But they've
So
always
just
been.
just I don't know, like just think about human nature. When we had all of those skills, it's just like, how could we not build ourselves a house? How can we not? It's like all of those things were like stripped away from us. We forgot a lot of the things that made us who we were, and it's just crazy because it's just like we got all these houses and all these big homes and all these different neighborhoods and all these different types of areas, but you got places where there's just people with nothing, no clothes on their back, nowhere to shower, nowhere.
Well, that's what I mean. That guy I saw, man, it was like, I just happened to make that U-turn and turn around. The first thing I saw with his butt hanging out the back of his pants. You know, just like, man, I got some shorts you can have and some shirts and stuff I never use. It was him walking down looking like that. And, but the sad thing about people don't look at him, especially as a black man, I know.
But do you
People
think
would be afraid
do you
of him.
think there was homeless people like always around? Like,
Oh yeah.
I mean like 200 years ago, in like 1800s,
Oh, yeah.
1700s.
Oh, yeah, man.
Even
There's
so,
people, man, brother, there's always people that have things and people that don't. Of course there are. Always.
do you feel like, is there something that we can probably be able to fix, or is this it's always gonna be?
Well, some people like being on the street. I'm gonna tell you, how do you define homeless? And some people do it by choice. As hard as it is to believe, I couldn't imagine, because you know me.
Some people do it by choice.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything else. Some people do things, and you wonder why do they do that. But you know me, I like my creature comforts, man. I like to take a shower and watch television and be comfortable. Have good.
Did
food,
you
and
meet
all the
somebody that told you that they like to do it by choice, or?
Well, like I says, how you define homeless? I have an uncle, my mother's brother. He's the last remaining brother of her. He used to have a good job, back in the day, but he lost that job. And as far as anybody knows, well, I don't know if I've been up here, haven't seen him in a few years, but as far as everybody knows, he's homeless. I used to see him walking down the street, and I'd speak to him.
Your uncle.
And I'd ask him if he knew who I was, and he'd say, yeah, you're Mary's boy. And it's like, but if he had a house or an apartment or anything, nobody knew where it was.
But do you think, could he have been off, or he was just a normal person without a housing? Like, do you think
What's normal?
maybe
What's normal?
that's very true?
Are you normal?
I don't think I'm normal at all.
Yeah, I'm
I don't
not.
even sleep at night, and
Well, I'm not
to be
normal.
honest, I don't think that's normal.
Yeah, well, see, I sleep very few
I
hours, so that's
sleep during the day.
Stuff, but see, what's normal? Are you normal? See, as we,
But there's a lot of crazy. So I mean, I see what you're saying.
yeah. So, but you know what I mean. If somebody chooses to live on the street, that's their choice, and he's all right with it. So some people don't want to be there and shouldn't be there. And but if a person like me, if I've decided, hey man, I'm dropping out, I'm leaving everything, that's my
But
choice.
do you think some people just kind of get to the point of life where they give up and accept where they just
Oh, yeah.
don't want anything, or it's more so of like free will, like
I think everybody has that story. Something puts them over the edge. It's like, man, people have a story that may have been successful and doing something really well, and then something happens, and it's like,
But even
I don't care about stuff.
even if we try to go way back to like Egypt and Africa, when those ancient civilizations, do you feel like they had like people on the street or homeless people, even though you had
Of course
like
they did.
tikis and different types of houses and
Yeah, of course, I can't speak for that. In some cultures, they don't allow people to be homeless, but there's something you have to look up because it's like some cultures they island cultures. I'm sure they share everything. So why would somebody be hungry when everybody has so much of everything?
but
Then
well,
other
I would
cultures,
say
it's
that's
the-
kind of
it's
different
the civilized cultures that I guess.
But when you say
Homelessness
civilized
runs-
cultures, are we talking about those cultures that are already established with like
Yeah, the
having
United States, Great Britain, France, Germany.
but
I can't speak for all
of
them,
those have a
but they have
history.
homelessness, I'm sure.
But all of those have a history of colonization and having people
Yeah.
build stuff for them, and having slaves, regardless if it was black or white, just having people build their society and do a lot of trade for them and all of that stuff. I feel like with all of those great civilizations, they came to the point of like overpopulation where there's too much. Well, I wouldn't say too much people in everywhere, but where the city becomes overpopulated, and then there's a lot of people to fill in, and a lot of people need jobs, and they feel like they need trades or skills, and then sometimes you kind of come to the point where not everybody's gonna be able to do that, and not everybody's gonna be able to eat, and not. But it's just like still with all this food and all this natural plants and all of these natural things on this earth, it's like how could we still even?
Oh, I know, but that's an age-old question. But it shouldn't. When you have surplus of everything, nobody should be hungry in this world. I agree. They throw food away. It's like, during the early part of the pandemic, they're on the news, they'd have all these farmers, just putting milk down the drain and dumping vegetables.
You said there's farmers is dumping vegetables.
Yeah, they were doing that because they couldn't. The first part of the pandemic, because they couldn't get the food to where it needed to be, so it was just going to waste. They was throwing it away, and it's still that now. You know how? Yeah, you got to research it, but a lot of food goes to waste. There's people. That's why some of those places get food from like restaurants that they don't use, and they take it. To
Let me
homeless
grab my
shelters and
phone
stuff.
really quick because I want to see how much food that goes to waste a year. Like how much stuff we probably throw away a year. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, sure.
How much food goes to waste in the U.S.? You got to see this. It's how to see the numbers. The United States is a global leader in food waste, with Americans discarding nearly 40 million tons of food every year. That's 80 billion pounds of food and equates to more than 161 billion of waste per person and 30 to 40% of the U.S. food supply. That's crazy. I'd even.
Let's say, well, like 1 in 5 children are don't get the food they need, and like 1 in 12.
But do you
1 in
think
12
it could be a
seniors.
problem with like distribution? Do you think people are just these foods may not be good? Like
Oh,
why?
no, it's not like that.
how-
We have surplus. Just a matter of getting it to the right people. Man, it's something beyond me. People study it and don't. I don't understand. Okay, if you're right there and you're hungry and there's a pile of cornbread right there, the whole thing, you got more than you need, and you got somebody who needs it. Once you get them together, instead you don't get what you need. The cornbread goes to waste. All it is getting the things together. You know what I mean? Get the people with the people who need it food.
But do you think there's probably a system behind where they're not giving us all of our food, or because of currency and because of people wanting to like buy and sell and all of these companies and these different these all of these different assets that are out there within like food companies and growing with farmers. Do you think all of that it just may be competition?
Well, yeah, it always has something to do with it, I guess. But like I said, the markets are something that you have to study. I couldn't speak on that because I don't know. But I was like, there's never been any surprise that there's surplus food, and there's never been a surprise that there's homeless people. If people being hungry, it's just one of those age-old problems. If for some reason it seems simple, getting somebody, a hungry person, the food, but there's always hungry people. There's always, you know.
So even in a perfect society, do you feel like, well, if there was a perfect society, like could there would still be a couple of homeless people? You think, or
Well, like you said, there's never going to be a perfect society. There's always going to be somebody who needs something. So, what do you know? What do you do? So,
it's that
you
desire
can't,
that
you can't solve all the world's ills, even though you have the best of intentions and stuff. But again, that's what I always put, like, the next generation, which you are, man. You gotta.
you don't think that's something we can solve though? Homeless people and hunger and.
Well, you got to ask a smarter.
I'm not
you gotta
saying
ask a
I'm
smarter
not
person than
saying
me.
I'm not
But it's
saying
something-
it's
it's something-
impossible, but when you see a stat like that where they're dumping out all those billions of food out a year, it's like we could definitely be distributing that out there to
Yeah,
like
well, see, a few minutes ago you didn't know that, right?
def-
Now that you have the knowledge, now you can work on it. That's why I tell you, man, you got to read and find out things, right?
very true.
Now, see, now that you know that, you're a little more passionate about, oh, they used to waste money. Yeah, I mean, waste food. Everybody knows that. But now you just read that, and it's like, man, what? Let me get up on my thing and talk about this. Yes, that's what your podcast's about, man. Things,
Yeah.
man. Then you can get somebody else who knows more about that and talk
No,
about.
definitely.
Or you can do some research yourself and just see how things like
But
that.
that's definitely what I also try to do. I try to reach out to different people who are, experts in different areas and, come on and definitely try to talk about all of these different ideas because,
You want to expand on things, right? You
Of
start on
course.
one thing, you're like, oh man,
I mean, I don't have the answers to everything, but I definitely got a lot
no
of
one
questions.
does, brother.
Definitely have a lot of questions. I just, just a lot of things we just see and, it's like, dang, how could this happen and why is this happening? It's just,
Well, those are questions people asked in the 70s,
And it's-
right? Now you're here in 2020 and people asking, you're the generation, well, how many things aren't like this now? That's why people took to the streets, man, and like, yeah, I tell you, you guys, man, you got the power to make some changes.
yeah. I wanted to bring up. I don't know if you heard about the case because there's a documentary on Netflix called Trial Number 4 about a guy named Sean Ellis. I don't know if you heard about him. He was in Boston and he was accused of murdering a cop.
You
Him
know,
and his friend.
I've been meaning to research that, brother. I got to read about that. 'Cause
Sean Ellis.
I've heard that name,
He
and
was in Boston.
yeah, I've heard a little bit about it. So I do want to. I don't know anything about
But
it. I've
he
heard
was accused of killing a cop, and it was actually in front of a Walgreens. He was accused of killing a cop. He was actually buying some diapers, and
Yeah, I heard some things, yeah.
at that time, the police, when stuff like that happens in the neighborhood, the cops they just go in, busting everybody's house, raiding people's stuff, taking a lot of, just taking whatever information they can, and I guess one witness pointed him out, or said, described him, and he gave an interview because his two cousins died that same week, and they asked him what was he doing at that Walgreens store, and I guess that gave them the suspicion or the right to try to make him the number one suspect and feel like he did that. But the crazy thing about it is he went to trial several times and proven not guilty. But the third time they proved him guilty and they sentenced him to like life in prison and like 5 to 10 years afterlife and all of that stuff. And it's just, and it's crazy because he was able to fight it and beat it, but he still ended up serving 22 years for something he didn't do. And it's just crazy when you hear a story like that, like
oh yeah, that's rough, man.
how many people could be, wrongfully accused of.
You look that up too. It's always like it's always there.
But
man.
I don't know if you
Yeah.
could see who's wrongfully accused because, a lot of people get convicted of their crimes. A lot of people take
Yeah,
plea
what is
deals. But
Was it the Innocence Project that takes up things like that? I know they have statistics on it. You go to the Innocence Project and find out how many people who have their convictions overturned for any kind of various reasons, right?
yeah, but just seeing a situation like that, How would you feel if you was locked up for 20 plus years for doing a crime you know you didn't do?
Man, if
And
I got locked up for a week, I'd be dead. I couldn't do it.
couldn't
I,
a week?
I was telling I was telling Patty yesterday, man. I don't say people you can stay in. I can't, man. I got to get outside. Nah,
They give you like an hour outside.
it's not outside. Like I go outside.
So
You
you
say how I
wanna
go outside? I go outside. I go. I don't walk around. I don't. I walk around this track out here, but I don't want to be in no box walking around. Man, you know, really, man. It's like I've known people that did time, and it's like I admire them for how they did it, man. But I can't imagine me doing that.
and the thing is, during that case, the cops that
If you told me I couldn't get out of here right now, I'd want to go. I'm sitting in your apartment talking, man. But if you said like, Charlie, man, watch out, someone's gonna get between me and that door, brother. Because it's just freedom, man. Freedom. It's like the guy says again, freedom. That one word, man. My books, man. This guy. He's just like there's no comparison between slavery and freedom. None. And it's like because he experienced both sides of it, right?
And
he was a slave,
but seeing,
and then he was a free man, and it's like, man,
but also that jail system is also like it kind of. I'm not gonna say it's slavery, but it's very similar. Where they, when you if you're convicted of a felony, there's certain things you don't, apply for, or certain things you don't qualify for.
oh no, they passed that law to get the vote back,
And and you lose your voting rights and all that stuff, and it's just like you do all that time with all of these, in the enclosed environment where the food is not properly, nutrition, and 23 hours locked up, and it's
yeah,
just
but as
like,
bad as it is now, man, that book right there, you read that, man, it was terrible. The brothers, the way they treated people, man, it's bad.
do you feel like jail was? Do you feel like jail is worse than slavery, or slavery? Well,
Man. I can imagine anything being worse than slavery. Somebody have power over you, life and death. I mean, I've known people who've been in prison and they have guards that treat them, but there are some laws. But hey, man, the guy slavery. I mean, they could do whatever they wanted to with you, and because you were just their property. You take the candle off the table and throw it and smash it. Nobody cares. You kill a slave that belonged to you. Nobody cares. It belonged to you. That's just, like I said, that's what you got to read about this stuff, man. It's crazy stuff. But
and it's just a lot of stuff that they were doing, and a lot of stuff our people was fighting for.
yeah.
It's like some of this. I feel like we kind of take for granted a lot of the things, that we just like you said, being able to smash that and nobody
Freedom.
would care.
Freedom, man. Freedom. Yeah, be
And
owned
a
by
lot of
somebody.
brothers-
we
and a
can't
lot-
identify with that today because we have freedom, man.
And a lot of brothers nowadays risk their freedom, and it's just
regardless of what we don't have materially, you can always go from here to there, and you have a semblance of freedom. But just to be not able to leave a certain territory unless you had a pass from somebody, and any person could ask you, "Where you going, boy?" And if you don't have that pass, they could beat you or take you somewhere else, man. It's like, man, you gotta read. But,
and that's I don't know. It was just a crazy time around then. Just being I don't know. I don't think I would be able to. I don't know if I would be able to experience that. Same how you said you wouldn't do a week in jail. I don't think.
Well, that's the question we all ask, man. When you read about things like that, you ask how people could suffer through that stuff, but people did. And, they kept the faith and were strong, and here we are. Because, they expected after the Civil War, after slavery, and a lot of people expected black people just to die off because they would have anybody to take care of them. But this is true, okay? Black people are supposed to just become extinct because without the care...
And that's what they were saying in the news, and that's what they were spreading around?
Man, it's in the books, brother. This is what they believe, Without white people to take care of them, they just going to die off because they can't take care of themselves. That was one of the theories.
It's obviously false.
Are we talking now? Are you operating electronics? Remember I told you before, they didn't think a brother could be a quarterback in the NFL, right? How many black quarterbacks we got now?
About,
Yeah,
and
well,
we got about like eight black starters.
And then go to college. I'm not talking about just NFL. I'm talking about college and high school, too. I remember when I played high school, the guy I played.
Were there any black
he was
quarterbacks?
He was one of the first ones. And that's what I mean. Because up to then, he was like, man, it was like, no.
When you said he, who'd you say?
Yeah, he was on the first one.
Who?
Jonathan, what was Jonathan's last name? Jonathan Wilson.
Jonathan Wilson.
Yeah. Then when I graduated, my good friend William Loudon, he was a black quarterback. But those were the first few in those years around 1969 and 70 and stuff. But and again,
What was that like playing sports, early on within, in that type of environment? Like, which, the everything just started being integrated. Like, what was the sports and the competition like?
oh, it was great, man. But I always loved sports. So I learned a lot from sports, and today is the day I enjoy watching sports like football.
Yeah,
So,
that Pittsburgh Steelers game.
So, yeah, well, I mean, sports. I think sports are good for people. Teach you how to interact with other people, different people. A lot like the military is like that too, because you're forced to interact with people you don't know and don't have a lot in common with, but you have a common goal, and that's always what brings people together when you have a common goal. I think.
Speaking of the military, and that's one thing you always told me, you didn't know some of the things you were going to get yourself into in your life and some of the choices you were going to make career-wise, some of the things you were going to do at this age. And looking back, you didn't know you was going to accomplish all of these things. Out of one of those things, which one of them was the most interesting? Because you had your own clothing shop, you were in the military, former teacher. Out of those things you did, which one of those ones was like the most exciting for you?
I got into teaching late, but I love teaching more than have my own business or traveling in the military or anything.
How come?
I just loved it, man. It's one of those things. Like the first day I was in the class, I knew I always love helping people, and I don't know, it's just something. It just like you said, when the guy saw the girl he loved, it's like he knew it. It was like, huh. And like I said, first day I was in the classroom, man. It was like, this is fun. I get paid to do it, and I help people too. It's like, man, that's the trifecta.
I don't know. I just feel like you have a way with, giving out guidance and, just all the experience you come with too. Just being able to give that back to somebody and I wouldn't say just give it back, but being able to actually guide somebody from making certain decisions.
Oh, yeah. Well, I tell you, I miss it, man. I hope I'm good at it because, like I said, I get positive responses most of the place I go. And I love doing it. So, like I said, I'm going to have to do something.
Of course. And I thank you so much, and one thing before, I want to finish everything, I want to tell you, just being young and, not really, having a father figure in life, it's always amazing to see a elderly black man or, somebody that you can come to and that'll just give you advice and experience. And that comes from the times where, I may not have relate, but I hear all these stories of what our people went through and the generations. It's always wonderful to be able to meet somebody like you, and just being able to talk to you is just amazing because all of the history and the music and all of the stuff all the stuff we was discussing before we started this. It was just every time I talk to you, I learn something, and I'm grateful for that.
I'm the same way, man. Little things. Like I said, I was wiping the wrong side of the CD until you told me different.
Yeah.
That's a little thing, right? With all I know, right? You're talking about knowledge of all things, man. With the CD, I was like, man, what are you doing? But oh man, that sharing's the main thing. But I'm pleased to do it, man. I'm glad I met you because you have an inquisitive mind, and that's a good thing, man. I think about it all the time, and I would love to have you in class because you ask questions.
I don't know, because in school, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, if you're in my class, man, it's a different thing.
You hear me? That's very probably true.
Because I'm proud, man. People would cut class to come to my class.
Then that's definite. That's definitely
people missing
me.
in the school. They send by. It's true. They send people by like, is so and so in here? I mean, you're not supposed to be in this class. And I'll always, I take the roll and I'm like, man, okay, if you're not supposed to be in here, you ought to leave now. I don't care if you're in here as long as you don't cause any trouble. Because if you're in here with me, you're gonna be cool, right? And everybody in school's all right with it. If a child is safe in a place, people know.
You were like the uncle or the, like.
I guess, yeah. So, but I was proud of that, man. And like I said, everybody they come to Mr. C for Charles, and they come in like, you're not supposed to be in here. Come on. And they be sitting there listening to me. We be doing stuff, and man, I love it. So it's like, man. It ain't no much, it's not much different from me and you talking to me going to a class. It'd be 29, 30 more people, but we like, man, what do you want to talk about? What? Yeah, let's go. Let's play the game. Let's talk about a book I read. Let's play the game I have in my car and talk about other things.
I don't know. I think that's a gift you have too.
Yeah, I do too. I'm blessed, man.
Of course, and I
But
think
I thank you for letting me be on, man. I've
No,
never
of
done
course.
this before. This is one more experience in my life, my
Of
brother. And
course,
I'm
thank
always
you.
proud of you and what you're doing. I like the way you set up, man. You got your
and I was gonna
man
say
behind the scenes back here. The guy that, they always say on television, people behind the cameras and when they
and-
do all the work, man.
but it's it's that support you get from the people behind the scenes that's what really matters.
Family.
And one thing I was gonna ask too, the last things, what would be your advice to somebody who's young and may not have experienced life, or maybe going through trials and tribulations, has their head down, and they want to pick themselves up and just see for the next day. What's advice you have somebody? I mean, for some.
If you're down, man, find something you love to do and do it. As long as it's something constructive. Just
Keeping
like
the
I
mind
said,
stimulated.
Yeah, man. Like I said, without my books and being able to love in nature and my family and just the fact that I like talking to people, I always think, man, where would I be? I can imagine myself without anyone. Without my books, I couldn't imagine myself. Without my family, if I had my books but not my family, or without my friends and people, it's like the whole complete you is what makes you. So I got to have my family and my books and my travel and all those things to be complete.
Of course, and thank you so much. I appreciate you for coming on. It was a pleasure.
My pleasure, brother.
Of
Thank you
course.
so much.